Hello and welcome to the Enterprise Tech Talk podcast, where I aim to discuss key challenges and new trends within IT industry. In this series, I try to explore key enterprise technology topics, not in complex technical jargons, but using simple business language that is hopefully easy to follow for business and IT audience alike. Okay, the topic of today's podcast is Composable Enterprise, a new business paradigm, and how we can adopt a modern architecture practices to transition to composable business. I attempt to explain this business paradigm and its building blocks, its key benefits, and the shifts required to transition to a composable business. Okay, so today's business landscape is defined not just by speed, but by radical systemic volatility. For senior leaders, the principal risk is the fusion of economic uncertainty, geopolitical instability, and technological disruption, especially the acceleration of artificial intelligence. Now, these threats are deeply interconnected, as you can imagine, and they demand an integrated, rapid response that traditional organizational structures and rigid, monolithic technology architectures they simply cannot deliver. The C-suite priorities are also shifting. Achieving long-term resilience and sustained strategic agility is now the new modernization goal. Now, this journey requires a profound change in perspective. We must move past the era where IT was merely a function that enabled the business to to our new technology form to the today's era where the technology foundation is a primary source of revenue. It's a core driver of growth and a structural determinant of our competitive differentiation. Now, if you look at the architecture patterns of the past, the failure was believing that consistency and predictability were sufficient. That monolithic mindset is now a competitive liability. The system-wide rigidity and reliance on tightly coupled components means, what does that mean? It means we struggle to pivot against market shifts or rapidly respond to evolving customer expectations. Now, this brings us to the architecture mandate of the decade, the transition to a composable business model. We are moving from a fragile, fixed structure to a more flexible, modular organization that can adapt and reconfigure business capabilities just like digital building blocks. This is how we reclaim agility. This is how we accelerate time to market and future proof our enterprises. If you look at the monolithic architectures of the past, the organizations, the need for speed runs headlong into the inherent limitations of traditional IT structures. These rigid systems manifest as monolith architectures, the complex, tightly integrated sticky glue that makes any major transformation exceptionally difficult. A monolith system consolidates the entire customer experience, right from the touch points, the business rules, the core platforms. They all come together into a single tightly coupled technology ecosystem. Now, this may be simpler to launch, um, but scaling and customizing beyond a predefined features, that's a high risk effort because any change risks affecting the entire operational system. The cost of this rigidity is often hidden and it typically manifests not just in maintenance complexity, but in the most critical business metric. Do you know what that is? The missed opportunities. The inability to quickly launch a new feature or pivot a service due to ecosystem inflexibility, it directly impacts potential revenue and competitive positioning. Also, architecture rigidity reinforces cultural inertia. Traditional business models valued consistency above all else, and this mindset is mirrored by hierarchical organizational structures that struggle to respond effectively to market shifts. Monolithic IT systems enforce this siloed mindset by making cross-functional data access and component sharing even more cumbersome, thereby reinforcing parochialism across the organizational boundaries. Overcoming the monolith requires a transformation that simultaneously addresses both technical decoupling and organizational restructure. Finally, we must consider the customer at the end of the day. Customers have established a new higher watermark, the experience benchmark, right? They now compare every digital interaction that we offer against the best they have ever received. I mean, from Apple and from Amazon and whatnot. Monolithic architectures often lack the necessary speed and flexibility to deliver these hyper-personalized experiences which are needed to meet these elevated expectations. This makes our architecture choice a strategic mandate for organizational survival, a competitive dominance, rather than it being merely an IT maintenance project. Now, in response to this strategic imperative, the adoption of alternatives such as the composable enterprise model is rapidly accelerating. This is a structural mandate, not, not a trend. Gartner defines a composable architecture as an organization that delivers business outcomes and adapts to the pace of business change. Now, this is achieved by deliberately moving away from rigid fixed systems towards a more flexible modular organization that rapidly adapts to change by reconfiguring core business capabilities. The foundational unit of this model is what is known as package business capability. It's a capability building block that is independently developed, can is purchasable or reusable, and which can run on its own or easily can combine with others. Right? The composable architecture must be approached as a fundamental business strategy rather than merely a technology implementation. This is important. Here, the profound acknowledgement here is that the business itself, that's important point to remember, business itself, not just IT systems, we must be architecture for continuous adaptation. In a sense, the architecture effectively becomes your core strategy. If business stakeholders lack understanding or do not champion the composable approach, even the best technology will fail to deliver the full potential. Let's zoom in a bit on the core difference between composable and monolith architecture approaches. Uh, the traditional model, which was the monolith architecture pattern, it focused on consistency and predictability. It prioritized the stability of the technology landscape over the speed to market, whereas the new currency is flexibility and adaptability. Composable architecture makes organizational agility a foundational asset, ensuring our business can pivot as fast as customer demand changes. In a monolithic architecture, most of the components are tightly coupled. It's simple to launch, but every modification increases your technical debt. It's like working with wet cement. Once it's set, any adjustment, as you can imagine, is a massive costly overall. The composable architecture, on the other hand, is built on loosely coupled, interoperable package business capabilities of PBCs. They are modular building blocks, which means you can reuse the components, reducing development effort and freeing up capital for genuine innovation. Now, in monolithic architecture, because of tight dependencies, um, any change carries a high risk of system-wide failure, which naturally translates into slower innovation and a cautious, risk-averse culture. On the other hand, under a monolithic composable architecture, modularity provides isolation. So when you update one component, you don't put at risk the entire the rest of the business. This low risk environment encourages rapid experimentation, which is a fundamental requirement for dominating in the digital age. The competitive cost of monolith is measured in time. If we talk about the business agility, um, it can take months or even sometimes years to roll out major system updates. This delays revenue and ensures you miss key market windows. Whereas a composable architecture, by allowing for independent development and deployment cycles, is proven to reduce time to market by stunning almost 30 to 50%. We move from shipping value quarterly or even to daily. Resilience is low within monolith architectures. We have single point of failure, making entire business highly susceptible to technical failures or sudden market shifts. On the other hand, when we talk about composable architecture, the resilience is intrinsic. The autonomy of your components means that if one part fails, the other keeps running. It also provides strategic resilience, the ability to easily swap out struggling technology or vendors or adding new business capabilities without bringing the business to a halt. That's really important. That's at the core of being a agile business organization. The composability within business is achieved when it deliberately transitions the traditional rigid fixed systems into a flexible modular organization that can rapidly adapt by reconfiguring core capabilities like building blocks. Now, this shift is guided by four strategic principles. First is modularity. This means partitioning the core business into manageable components or PPCs. This separation allows for independent scaling and control over change, ensuring that a system or a failure in one area does not propagate throughout the entire system. Think of an insurance company, right? You have operations which are more focused on claims management, you have operations which are more focused on policy management, another operation could be focused on purely marketing or acquiring new customers, and so on and so forth. Now you can think of these as in independent manageable business components, or PPCs, right? And then you can design the or architect the whole organization around those. Second is autonomy. This principle demands that components minimize their dependencies on each other. The autonomy is crucial for speed, empowering teams to make rapid decisions and implement changes quickly within their domains. Again, if we continue to take the example of an insurance company, organization or insurance industry, the autonomy means that um, um, a team which is more focused on, let's say, an acquisition, or versus a team which is more focused on, let's say, fulfillment, or some other teams, they work relatively autonomously, independent of each other, right? The third is orchestration. Now, this is a little bit of leadership function. Um, we as leaders, we must focus on negotiating the seamless interaction between these autonomous components to allow for rapid and dynamic recomposition of end-to-end processes, right? Again, if there is a one product team focusing on acquisition, another for marketing, another for fulfillment, or another for claims, how we can orchestrate these capabilities together in a way, in a more dynamic way, so that we can come up with the new processes, new experiences which are required for which are demanded by customers. And the final principle is discovery. The organizations must cultivate the ability to rapidly discover, understand, and reuse existing PVCs. This is how we can speed through reuse, avoiding the necessity of building solutions from scratch. Now, here is a critical balancing act that we all must, I would like to emphasize on. The trade-off between autonomy, which is speed, and orchestration, which is consistency, right? As you can imagine, unchecked autonomy risks architectural sprawl. duplication, operational complexity. Yet, over centralized orchestration, it risks reverting us to the bottleneck problems that we have all faced in the past and we still face today. The solution lies in adaptive governance, a model that mandates robust, centrally managed standards and contracts. This ensures product teams are fast and autonomous in their execution, but consistent in how their components interact with the wider enterprise, preserving the overall data integrity and security across the entire ecosystem. This architecture shift directly provides structural resilience against any external disruption, whether it's market-induced disruption, geopolitical, or technological. Okay, so translating the strategic vision of composability into reality requires mandatory architecture shifts that provide the engine of business agility. The the there are at a high level four technical foundations. Um, they are they are aligned with what is known as MAC principle: microservices, API first, cloud native, and headless. Now, leveraging cloud native solutions, it provides essential operational elasticity, resilience, and scalability that is required for independent components to operate effectively. When you think of microservices, a microservices architecture is characterized by services that can be independently developed, deployed, managed, and scaled, right? So how does that relate to PBCs and the composable architecture? So these services must be structured around specific modular business capabilities. Um, this is how your IT architecture directly aligns with the business functions, forming the package business capabilities. This modular design breaks down traditional silos and enables cloud style agile operations. Now, for PBCs to be effectively combined and reused across enterprise, um, we need robust connectivity, right? Which is essential. This is provided by API first design philosophy, which treats every business capability as a discoverable, consumable service. Again, if you think of insurance industry where claims related capabilities are there or policy related capabilities are there, how these capabilities are discoverable through APIs, right? They are exposed through APIs, and API is a mechanism they actually can connect with each other and talk to each other, right? Organizations require a strong API strategy to enable seamless or integration across different business units. Composable architecture thrives on real-time responsiveness. This is another important aspect, and this is enabled by adopting event-driven architecture or EDA. It allows systems to detect, process, and react to real-time events as they occur. It ensures that the moment an event happens, such as an inventory change or a customer purchase, information is instantly sent to all necessary systems and applications. Right? A significant challenge in moving from monolith systems, which enforce immediate data consistency, to a loosely coupled event-driven environment is maintaining integrity. In composable architectures, immediate consistency is often replaced by eventual consistency, meaning data integrity is achieved over time, not necessarily instantaneously. Now, to achieve this, there are well-established architecture patterns such as event sourcing or command query responsibility segregation or CQRS. None of which we are going to go in details. That's not the aim of this discussion. And there is enough research topic information available even on the internet as well if someone is interested to go through those in more details. But these can be considered to support composable architecture. Okay, now with all said and done, right? everything that is beneficial on paper, at least on when it comes to composable architecture, composable business paradigm, etc. At the end of the day, the argument for composable architecture, it must translate technical elegance. It must be grounded in a robust business case that quantifies improvements in speed, revenue, cost efficiency, and risk mitigation. And the data already substantiates this value proposition. 9 out of 10 organizations that have implemented composable technology, they report that it has met or even exceeded their ROI expectations. The single most compelling metric for C-suite is what? It's speed. So enterprises leveraging a composable architecture can accelerate the time to market for new products and services by a substantial 30% to 50% through modular business capabilities. Furthermore, real-world case studies show development times shrinking by up to 80% and publishing times being reduced by up to 90%. Now, this gain in speed is what directly enables true innovation. Composable architectures support rapid prototyping by simplifying the integration of new technologies and allowing quick testing and iteration without necessitating massive upfront investment. This acceleration of innovation cycle time is ultimate metric for competitive response. The shift away from monolith provides significant financial upside through cost mitigation. By decoupling legacy systems and adopting API first microservices based architectures, organizations typically report IT cost savings in the range of 15 to 25%. These savings are realized by reducing reliance on external contracts or through strategic decommissioning of legacy systems, which directly reduce accumulated technical debt. ROI must also be multidimensional, balancing financial gains with metrics across efficiency, agility, innovation, etc. Right? So consider the revenue side. The architectural support for hyper-personalization translates directly into revenue growth through, let's say, improved customer experience, with documented conversion rate lifts to 0.5% in some instances, driving millions in value. In fact, comprehensive economic analysis proves that organizations can achieve an ROI of up to 295% over a 3-year period by adopting composable architecture. By the way, most of the quantifiable benefits that I'm talking about here, I also mentioned the sources which I looked into just for your reference. Now, beyond the numbers, the strategic value extends to your people. Replacing old monolith platforms with composable parts is a strategic asset for talent retention and collaboration. Developers actively prefer modern modular environments over maintaining complex monolith code bases, improving job satisfaction, reducing dependency on tribal knowledge. Ultimately, the results are pretty much clear. Organizations with high composability report superior comparative business performance against their competitors. This architectural choice is an investment in organizational longevity and continuous competitive adaptation. The primary objection to any major architecture transformation is the perceived risk and expense of changing existing systems that are currently operational. I think we are all have experienced this before. We must stress that a high risk full replacement strategy is something we should avoid. So the industry preferred and proven strategy for migrating away from legacy monolith architectures without requiring a high risk cutover is what is called as strangler fig pattern. This methodology, what does it cover? It typically involves gradually building new modular services around the edge of old systems, legacy systems. New features are built as independent microservices and capabilities that intercept traffic and functionality more and more progressively, strangling the monolith until it can be safely decommissioned. This, of course, you can imagine that this is a multi-year approach in most of the cases, and the risk typically most of the organizations run into ability to justify investment in these kind of approaches. But it's a pragmatic approach, and this pragmatic approach focuses on sequence, visible wins, and it typically follows three phases. You transform, that is target a function, you first target a capability or a function with high business impact but low technical risk, and create a new service on it, testing it alongside the legacy system, right? Then you coexist, allow the monolith application and the new capability or microservices to run side by side. This phase coexistence ensures a smooth transition and validates new components or and uptake of new components. And then finally eliminate. So safely decommission the old system once all critical functionality and traffic have been fully rerouted to new capabilities. Before technical execution begins, strategic groundwork is also essential. So people like enterprise architects, they must break down existing business capabilities into smaller elements to identify varying rates of change and need for agility, typically using up things like business capability maps and value stream mapping, etc. Okay, let's talk a bit on governance of governing the ecosystem as well. Um, so composable business architecture demands a corresponding composable organization and a modern governance framework to ensure stability, security, and scalability. This is where the people and process meet the technology. The organizational structure must transition from rigid hierarchies to fluid team-based models, requiring the definitive dissolution of traditional IT and business silos. And that's why this is a business paradigm. It's not about composable architecture from a technology perspective. This is the composable architecture for the entire enterprise. The new operating model centers around two critical structures. One is first is product teams, and when I say product teams, I would call those as API first product teams. Now these teams they function as product owners for their specific package business capabilities. They define clear capabilities, contracts, and interaction models, making their services easily discoverable and consumable across the enterprise, and that helps to foster deep specialization and speed, right? Then there are platform teams. Now these are the enabler teams. Instead of expecting every feature developer to master complex, let's say cloud infrastructure, these teams, the platform teams, they act as kind of internal product teams. They build and maintain a curated internal developer platform that abstracts the infrastructure complexity, providing developers and engineers with self-service tooling and standardized pre-configured environments. Um, this function serves to enforce API consistency, security requirements, and deployment standards by default. Right now, C-suite plays a crucial role in establishing these clear high-level policies for governance, security, and compliance. Now, this oversight is necessary because it ensures that adaptive governance effectively balances decentralized autonomy with mandated corporate consistency. In particular, the CIO's role is more important. It needs to evolve dramatically from just managing backlog to becoming a primary enabler, providing strategic vision, the technology platform, and the governance framework that allows business innovation to flourish. Composable architecture relies on integrating multiple components from different sources, which inevitably increases the security attack surface and complexity. Now, to mitigate this, a comprehensive security strategy is also equally important, including end-to-end encryption, robust access controls, and so on and so forth. Um, the other thing to consider is specifically around managing vendor risks. because when in a composable architecture, when we talk about multiple capabilities which could be sourced from different vendors, the overall vendor landscape may increase. And what that means that we have to effectively manage the risks from these vendors. So maintaining accurate vendor inventory, having periodic assessments, identify which are the high risk vendors, etc. That is really important. Having a strong vendor management operational process. And so ultimately, the composable architecture serves a vital cultural objective, fostering a culture of experimentation. Successful composability requires leadership to encourage cross-functional collaboration and establish a fail-fast mindset and allow teams to test new ideas quickly and effectively. Right? So again, the CIO's evolution in this structure highlights that technology is no longer separate from business process. It is the fundamental structure enabling the business to adapt and exploit the new market trends. Okay, so to conclude, in summary, the transition to a composable business model underpinned by a modern IT architecture is no longer a technological luxury. It's a necessity for competitive survival in the new digital age. The evidence is compelling, and organizations with high composability report superior competitive business performance against their peers. And we had talked about some of those benefit benchmarks. The roadmap towards composability is of manage incremental change. The senior stakeholders need to adopt a strategy of value-driven transformation using the proven low-risk patterns like strangler pick pattern. Our focus must also be on building robust foundations like API first foundations and institutionalizing adaptive governance. Right? But ultimately, by viewing the composable architecture as the core strategy, we ensure that our organizational structure, the talent management, the governance frameworks are perfectly aligned to exploit the speed and resilience that modernity provides. Okay, so we covered a lot of ground today. Moving from strategic liability of monolith status quo to the architectural blueprints of the composable future. The challenges are real. Legacy dependence, data consistency, and the sheer inertia of organizational structure. But the rewards are overwhelming and quantifiable. The monolith era is let's say it's over. Agility is the new currency, and composable architecture is the engine that generates it. The choice before all of us is really simple. Should we continue to manage complexity or should we architect for speed? Finally, I want to leave you with one single powerful message. Your architecture is no longer just a tool for the business. It is a core strategy for your competitive adaptation. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Hope you all found it useful. If you want to discuss this topic further, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Thank you.